Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, they will not care how devout you have been, but they will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones. That is a quote from Marcus Aurelius, a philosopher who I will fully admit I don't actually know that much about aside from this quote. However, I really like this quote, and this quote, I would say, kind of summarizes my beliefs about religion pretty well. This quote is one of the reasons that, to me personally, it makes the most sense to be an atheist. So I realize that this video is going to be a little spicy, a little controversial. Might be a bit of a hot take, but this is all my own opinion, and I want to be clear that I in absolutely no way mean any disrespect to anyone who is religious, because I understand that everyone is going to have their own way to think about these kinds of things. It's a very subjective topic. It's not something I really feel like I can totally say anybody is wrong or right about. It's just what you think. It's just what you think. Based on your experience with the world. But I personally do not consider myself religious. I grew up Christian. When I was growing up, my parents, we wouldn't go to church like every Sunday, but we would go to church every so often. I don't know. My parents didn't really take me to church very much, but they took me a few times. So my parents have always been the kind of people who, at least when we were growing up, were pretty religious, but not, it wasn't something that they focused on a ton or was like a huge part of our lives or anything like that. But to me, learning about religion when I was younger, it felt huge to me because I was like, how could this... Oh, there's a all-powerful being who controls everything that happens? Like, how... I don't know. To me as a kid, I was like, how could that not be, like, something you think about a lot? So when I was younger, it was something I would think about a lot. Unfortunately, that resulted in kind of a not so good experience with religion in some ways. There were good things too, which I'll get to later in the video, but there were some bad things. And part of that is that I would constantly overthink so many of my actions of is this really what God would want me to do? Am I being the best person I can 24/7? And there's I think it's good to try and think of things like that to trying to improve yourself. But for a little while, I was doing it to an extent where it wasn't resulting in self-improvement. It was just resulting in constant second guessing of everything I did due to this fear that if I did things wrong, I would go to hell or something. And that wasn't even something that wasn't something my parents pushed on me or anything like that. My parents were honestly great. They never pushed anything like that on me, but just being someone who considered myself Christian, I would watch TV shows that sometimes would discuss the topic of Christianity, and they would bring up ideas like hell and things like that on in like media and stuff like that, and I was always scared because I was like, I have to be perfect all the time or I might go to hell, because who knows how much sin is too much. Like I don't know. Like it was very vague to me. Like, so it just resulted in having really bad anxiety about that kind of thing all the time, which is part of the reason that I'm kind of glad that I eventually mostly let go of those beliefs. And I say mostly because, while it definitely isn't as big of a problem today as it was when I was younger, even to this day, even though I consider myself an atheist, there is still this like creeping thought at the back of my mind sometimes. I just try to ignore it, of like, what if you're doing the wrong thing, you know? Uh, and it's something that bothers it bothers me a lot, but it's not as bad as it was when I was younger. Not even close to being as bad, because I don't really believe it anymore. It's just a weird little nagging voice at the back of my brain that I mostly ignore. That's one of the that's I shouldn't even say that's one of the reasons. Well, yeah, that kind of is one of the reasons that I started to think religion was bad. It was also like, you know, on a lot of religious media I would see, it would seem to suggest the idea that questioning religion or questioning your belief in God is a bad thing. But I couldn't help but question it sometimes, and that would also, that would cause the same problems, where I would be like, oh God, what if I'm a bad person for questioning this? Or eventually I kind of realized, like, well, if by having the belief I'm not allowed to question it, then it's probably not a good belief to have. Or at least that's how I sort of eventually started reasoning it out in my mind. Another reason that I sort of backed away from my own religious beliefs is, and I want to be clear that I recognize this is not all Christians and it's not all religious people of any religion, but there's a lot of hatred towards people who are different, or who want to live different kinds of lives, or who just, like LG, like there's a lot of hatred for LGBT people in a lot of religions, or at least a lot of the more extreme, I guess, religious groups, is maybe more so what I should say. That's always bothered me, because it's never made sense to me to be or to morally judge people, or say that people deserve to go to hell or anything like that, based on something that I do not believe they could choose, and that doesn't really seem wrong or to hurt anybody, for the most part, in general anyways. And again, my family was never like this, because we were never extremely Christian, but it was something I saw with a lot of other religious people that just really kind of turned me away from it. I found it very off-putting. But I would also like to talk about what I think are some positive aspects of religion that I actually do have to admit I kind of miss. And in some ways I almost feel like I am an atheist, but there's a small part of me that sometimes wishes I could believe in religious things again, but it no longer, I no longer can, really, because it doesn't really gel with the way that I think. But there's good things about it. One of those good things, and this is something I think you can get elsewhere, which is good, but even so, it's important, is community. I think religion can give people a very good sense of community with their shared beliefs, and the people who share beliefs with them. I actually think one of the reasons so many people are more lonely or feel more lonely in today's world might be, at least in part, because people don't feel the same sense of community. They're not, there's less people, I believe, going to church nowadays, or a less percentage of the population. I think that's a shame in a way, because I think community is really, really good for people, and I think even if you're not religious, you need to try and find some way of forming some kind of sense of community with other people. And I also think religion is a good way for people to help find a sense of purpose or feeling like a part of something bigger, which I think is just, is generally probably a pretty good feeling to have. I think it makes you more optimistic and just generally feel better in your life if you're able to think that way. And then lastly, although this is something that I do have some mixed feelings about, which I'll get into after this, the afterlife, the idea that you will continue existing in some form after your death. I think in some ways, especially if you feel like you know what's going to happen, like oh, I'm gonna go to heaven. Like if you feel like you know that, it probably makes the concept of death and mortality a lot less scary than it otherwise would be. And death is something that, I'm not gonna lie to you, terrifies me. I often wish I could put my consciousness in like a robot body so that I could like live longer or something. So yeah, it is, that is something. So I do think there are good things about it too, but one there's also one issue with the afterlife, which again is the concept of hell. This is another thing that a lot, not all, but a lot of people who believe in religion believe in this idea of hell, where people who have sinned too much and didn't ask for forgiveness enough will go to hell. And I find it strange because I find the entire idea of the existence of hell to be unjust. And that's why, in some ways, I kind of have a bit of a hard time understanding people who have this belief that there is a God and that this God is good, but this God also allows people to end up in hell for eternity. This to me, the idea of hell in itself, I mean, of course there's things that are like obviously unjust, like, anyone who thinks like someone is going to go to hell for being LGBT, or anything like that, I think is crazy. That is, you know very easily something I can say I disagree with, and something I don't think people would deserve to go to hell for. But even people who do have done genuinely bad things or made bad mistakes, like, eternal suffering seems like there's no way that it could not be unjust. it's eternal. Like eventually, no matter what, you just like someone's punishment is going to infinitely exceed whatever else they may have done, you know? And I mean even in the real world, I don't think it's just to like even if someone did something really really bad, I wouldn't, I would say it's just to throw them in prison. I wouldn't say it's just to torture someone. Pretty much ever. It goes very heavily against my beliefs, and so to me, I I don't feel like I can be a Christian. Like even if I were to get past the fact, the logical side of my brain, I guess, that just feels like, religious beliefs don't have enough scientific backing for me to believe them. Even if I were to somehow get past that part of my brain, I still don't know if I could really, like, even if I thought that a god was real, I don't know that I would want to worship one who would do something that I consider unjust on that extreme of a level. So that is why. Sorry, this video has been kind of rambly, but that is basically why I consider myself an atheist and why I hold the beliefs that I do. And if you don't agree, if you are religious, that's fine. Again, I don't have any, no disrespect towards you, as long as, I think if you use religion as like, as like a way, like some extreme people I've seen do, as like a way to bash people who don't share your beliefs, I don't do that. I think that's a shitty thing to do. Please don't do that. But I don't have any disrespect for religious people necessarily. There's a lot of religious people in my life who I love, who I have a lot of respect for. And if you have a different perspective that you want to share in the comments of this video, as long as you can do so respectfully, please go for it. I'd be interested to read some other perspectives. But with that being said, guys, this has been me ranting and rambling about religion, I guess, and my own feelings about it and beliefs. If you found it interesting, like the video, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.